everybody, today we have ourselves a little bit of a project. I saw a long time ago, and even since then, a really cool wedge mechanism that used a big 1/2-inch impact, just a cordless impact, to drive a wedge into the back cut of a tree and tip it over. The manufacturer was making that particular unit, made a couple of really cool ones that were remote control and all sorts of stuff and whatnot, and so they could get the cutter that was doing the cutting out of the picture and away from the tree for a hazardous situation with overhead hazards and whatnot. Anyhow, all that to say, those things are wicked expensive. Even the simple wedge that doesn't come with an impact costs like almost $1,000 bucks. So by the time you buy that, a good 1/2-inch impact, you're looking at the price of another saw to carry around with you in the woods. So I'm not spending that kind of money on something like that, but I thought it was a simple enough concept that maybe I could make one. So we're gonna dive into making one. I think these are all the things I'm gonna need here. We will see, but these are all things I got at the local home improvement store, with the exceptions of this 10-inch wedge. They had some 6-inch wedges, but I wanted to use something bigger. So I guess the wedge did make it, I don't know, I got it for $12 at the Arborist supply here in town. So I guess everything all together would be like 60 or 65 bucks, something like that. Still much cheaper, much cheaper than almost $1,000. First thing I need to do is cut and score this sheet metal with a grinder. Let me get to that. Now in principle, what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold each of these ends up around this wedge. So this stuff doesn't fold or bend really easy when it's cold, and I don't have a great way to heat it up, so I'm actually gonna just score it with the grinder in 2 spots, and that should allow us to fold it exactly where we want. Wow, that one score is not straight. I hope it works out anyway. And it's not being real precise in the bend. I'm gonna cut a little bit deeper. I wanna go just deep enough for it to bend nicely and not too deep, because then it'll give up on me and break off. There we go. That's a nice sharp corner. We like that. Can't bend the second one that way. Here we go. This table lets me bend just about the right distance. Tuck it up under there. There we have it. That's pretty good. Concept we're going for is we're going to put this wedge in here, and then we're going to set ourselves up with a screw to drive it out and spread these 2 plates apart, and eventually that'll push over the tree. Now that these are bent, I'm going to weld these score marks up to make them strong again. My welding skills aren't anything to write home about, but my grinder skills are good enough to kind of help fix things. So this is what we got now. We got our wedge-shaped piece, all nice and strong. We slip our wedge into here. Actually fits quite nice. So let's go about adding a screw to the back. My original plan now was to weld this nut on the back here and drill a hole for that threaded rod right here, this thing, to go through and push on the wedge. But since we already know my welding skills aren't that great, and welding the nut on the back here would depend solely on those welds to hold the nut on, I think I'm going to try a different approach. I had this little piece of scrap steel laying around. I cut it up to size. I think what we're going to do is weld this on here, and then flip the whole apparatus over and slide it in the end like so. That way the nut will be contained in there, and that'll help hold things, because the nut will be pushing directly against the steel and won't be pulling on my welds if they were on the outside. I'll weld the nut to here after I drill a hole in it, and then I'll weld the whole thing on just the ends into here. Our threaded rod is 3/4 of an inch. I only have this little pistol grip drill, so I'm actually going to drill this out to probably maybe 1/2 inch. I don't know, we'll see. I'll go up in steps, but I'll start with our 1/4 inch, and then what I'll end up doing is finishing up with a die grinder. Put a little cutting oil on it, because we need all the help we can get. Battery died. right, that wasn't too painful. Wow, I just sharpened this drill bit because it was really dull and I think I just made it worse. Let's give this a test here. All right, let's weld it up. Got this all welded up now, and it fits in here real nice. So next thing I want to do is punch a hole in this piece. Wow, that's easier to drill. It fits. It's a pretty nice round hole if I don't say so myself. All right, so the plan here is to use this big old threaded rod with a nut on it, kind of hold things in place exactly where we want them in there while we weld it. That way all the holes will be lined up and everything will be just the way it needs to be. Now we'll just weld up the ends. Alright, this thing has turned out pretty good. I'm happy enough with it for what we're doing to kind of see if this is going to work out or not. It's not something that I would consider a finished project as far as the fit and finish, but we're all about proof of concept with this to make sure it's going to work before we put a ton of time into making one that looks really nice. So now what's left is we need to find a way to make that threaded rod interact with the back of the wedge here. This thing's going to be in here. My goodness, it's kind of difficult. One second. I got the Hand Saver 5000. There, the edges of that sheet steel are pretty sharp, peeling some of that off. But anyhow, as you can see, there's a little gap in there. I just need to find a way for that rod to push on this wedge without destroying it. Because I think if we just push on it, it might want to let this wedge wander as it's pushing, and I don't think it'll work. So we need to figure out a way to keep that together. With my limited resources here, I think the best solution is going to be to drill this thing out with our 5/8 drill bit, and then kind of try to tune the shape up with a die grinder. We'll see if it works. Alright, I think that'll do the trick. Actually made it a little bit too big. The die grinder worked pretty good too. It didn't do as much melting as I thought it would do. It also gave me the opportunity to kind of flatten the bottom of this hole out because a drill bit is pointed and would have left a kind of a conical shape in the bottom of the hole. But with this flat bottom to the hole now, I think this will push on it better. Got the rod threaded in here. Let's push this in. See if it all lines up here. This is not the most precise thing I've ever built, so curious to see. Oh yeah, it looks like it's going in there just fine. Nice. Alright, well, something I want to do to try to avoid destroying this plastic wedge, because this rod is only pushing on a small portion of the wedge, I want to try and take a brass washer and slip it down into here so that way there's some sort of bearing surface for the rod to push on. I really wanted to use a bigger washer, but there wasn't a whole lot of options, so we got this one for now. It seems like it's helping, but you know, a bigger one would help. I'm not sure how I would tell that, but if that's the case, I'll see if I can get some bigger ones to fit in there. here we go. This will be first real test proof of concept anyway. It is slow going for coming out the end there as I turn the rod, but that's okay. That means we'll have good mechanical advantage, so that will be a good thing. Now I want this rod to be long enough to push the wedge all the way out the end so we never run out of rod, but I don't need all 24 inches of this thing. So I'm going to cut it off here and weld some nuts onto the head of it so that way we can turn it with the impact wrench. Well, that took long enough. Welded up quite nicely. I'm just hoping that welding all the way around this rod didn't make it weaker or something, cause it to fail down the road. But I think this part is done. Now the last thing we have to do is I want to add some texture to this. All of the other commercially available versions of this that I've seen all have like dimples or something on here to kind of give it a texture so it doesn't just slide out when you're trying to use it. So let's take the welder and just put a bunch of dots on there. Alrighty, well that didn't turn out too bad. It might not qualify as artwork, but I think it'll get the job done. I'm gonna do the other side real quick, and then let's put this thing together. Give this a little test run here. Ooh, ooh, ooh. There's a little bit of resistance in that screw. Alright, so in theory, in principle, in an unloaded environment, it works. So I guess the next thing to do is to test it in a real world environment. I'm gonna lube up this screw with a bunch of probably some red grease or something like that, and then let's go take it out on a job and give it a try. I'm gonna spray the wedge down with this stuff too. I don't want to put grease in the wedge because I think that's just gonna turn into a mess, but I think this might be all right. I have no idea how much of this stuff to use. If anybody knows how to use this, let me know. Let's get out! Haha, that worked out pretty good. It wasn't flawless, there's room for improvement, but it did the trick. That's awesome. I'm out on another job now, but my editor Taylor tells me that I forgot to film an outro, so I really want to see what you guys think of this. What can we do to make it better? It's obviously not as good as that $1,000 piece that you can get commercially, but what can I do to get it there? I think the biggest thing is maybe making the sheet metal a little bit longer relative to the wedge so it sticks in the kerf a little bit easier without having to make it wider with a saw. And then the other thing I think that might help is maybe finding a way to connect the wedge to the screw. Right now it's just there in that pocket and the wedge falls out kind of easy and it makes it kind of cumbersome at a critical time. Put down in the comments what you think we could do to make it better. I'm certainly open to ideas. As always, thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. We'll catch you next time.